I'm Oshun, private advisor to elite women leaders and creator of the Sanctuary Path and the Sustainable Feminine Leadership Framework. I want to welcome you to the very first episode of what I'm calling Conversations from the Sanctuary. I created this space because I truly believe women deserve deeper conversations about success, leadership, and what it truly means to live a life well lived. So much of what we consume today encourages us to do more, achieve more, produce more, and become more, and very little of it invites us to pause and ask a much more deeper and meaningful question. And that question is the life I'm living actually the life I want to live, and is it bringing me fulfillment? And so each week I'll be sharing a conversation inspired by my own experiences and all of the extraordinary women I have the privilege of serving. And so I want you to understand that these conversations aren't lectures, they aren't motivational talks, but they're thoughtful conversations, an opportunity for us to gather, to slow down together, reflect, and perhaps recognize somewhere within ourselves what has been trying to ask for our attention. And so today's conversation is very deeply personal for me because it begins with actually my own personal story. And that's why I called it "The Life You Built May No Longer Be the Life You're Being Called to Live." And I want to start off by asking you a question. Have you ever looked at the life around you and realized that on paper everything looks exactly as you hoped it would look? Everything looks perfect, but somehow it doesn't feel the way you imagined it, doesn't bring you for the fulfillment and joy that you hope it would bring you. You've built a successful career or a successful business, or you're leading an organization and you achieved lots of financial security, and you've become the woman other people admire and look up to. But yet deep inside of you, there's a quiet voice asking inside of you, is this really it? And this is really an uncomfortable question because nothing appears to be wrong with you or going wrong in your life externally. In fact, everything looks perfect, everything appears to be right. And that's what makes it the most difficult for you to acknowledge that question because it isn't logical. And I know that feeling all too well because I myself actually lived this. And there was a season in my life, by every external measure, I had succeeded. I held a prestigious leadership position. I earned a high six-figure income. I lived in a beautiful home and had built the kind of life many would aspire to create. And I worked incredibly hard for a very long time to get there. And I believe that reaching those milestones will finally bring me fulfillment and joy that I have been searching for, but it didn't. And something unexpected began happening. And so long before I ever left that role, something inside of me had already begun leaving. Now, this wasn't dramatic. It didn't happen dramatically. There wasn't one catastrophic moment that changed everything. It was something much more quieter, much more softer. And it began with a heaviness in my body that I couldn't explain. Every morning became a little bit harder than the one before. My body was trying to tell me something, but I have to admit now, looking back, my mind actually wasn't willing to hear it at the time. And I remember waking up daily feeling exhausted. I remember driving into the office feeling this feeling in my chest that I couldn't quite put to words. And, I really love serving the people. I really love making a difference. But I realized that my nervous system never truly rested. Even when I came home, I wasn't really home. I was thinking about meetings, preparing for tomorrow, answering emails, solving problems, and carrying the weight of every single person who depended on me. And, maybe you're experiencing this yourself or have experienced it, where you're physically sitting at the dinner table with family, but mentally you're already on tomorrow's meetings and what you need to do. And so you're home, but in reality, you're not really home. You're not really present. And so over time, what I noticed is that parts of me that once felt alive were slowly disappearing. My creativity was going, my joy was going, it became harder to access, and time with my family, it became increasingly interrupted. Even when I had a free weekend, I was often too exhausted to enjoy it. And as I look back on that experience now, I really realized something really important. And for years, I really thought it was burnout. I thought I was just, I needed to rest. But today I would describe it as something much more deeper, something much more profound. This wasn't simply burnout. I was deeply misaligned in my life. And there's a profound difference between the two experiences. You see, understanding burnout is something we can fix quickly with rest, but misalignment gently asks us whether the life we're looking for still reflects the woman that we want to be and brings us the fulfillment that we need. And misalignment is something that rest doesn't solve. And so, one of the greatest lessons that I had to learn is that really our intuition will interrupt our lives overnight. It will whisper, it will nudge. And this whispering and nudging isn't always logical, it's an invitation. It's an invitation that patiently asks us to pay attention long before anything external changes. And so, the irony of this experience for me was that I had already understood this intellectually. I studied holistic health. I had trained extensively in women feminine traditions and understanding the female body and the importance of honoring our inner voice and natural rhythms and intuition. But yet I found myself overriding those whispers, chasing what I thought, being caught in the trap of external success. And I became really good at pushing through, which so many women are good at. And so finally, what happened was I had reached a moment of complete surrender. I can remember one night dropping to my knees and praying to God and asking to remove me from the position immediately because I knew it was not where I needed to be anymore. And within 24 hours, everything changed. I was actually removed from the role. And at first, it was devastating. I thought I had lost everything that I had worked so hard for. And it was really hard to move through that experience. But when I look back on that experience now, I realized that I didn't lose anything. I was being given my life back. I was being moved in a new direction. And it completely changed my understanding of success and joy and what it means to be fulfilled. And so, what I've come to realize over the years is that women don't often arrive at these moments because is going wrong. Most of the time, everything looks externally right, but they arrive because something true inside of them is trying to emerge, making them feel very uncomfortable within themselves. And so many women mistake this for a breaking point, but it's actually what I like to call a threshold. And there's an important difference between the two. What we need to understand is that a breaking point suggests that there's a failure, but a threshold is something very different. It's an invitation into the next evolution of your life. It's an invitation into deeper alignment with yourself and what truly brings you joy, fulfillment, and will light you up. It's a completely different relationship with success in all areas of your life. And so it brings you into a way of leading that doesn't require you to abandon yourself, or a life that doesn't require you to abandon yourself anymore. And this is the threshold where I now meet so many women that I have the privilege of serving. And these women aren't broken, they're actually profoundly successful, but they've outgrown a way of life that they once worked so hard to build, and they recognize this and they're ready to work through that transformation and shift. And so this week, I want to leave you with something to reflect on. What if the life you've built isn't wrong, but it's simply no longer aligned? It's no longer complete for you. What if the exhaustion that you've been feeling isn't really a weakness? What if it isn't really failure? What if it's actually your inner wisdom talking to you? What if the life you have right now isn't fully falling apart per se, but what if it's quietly trying to lead you somewhere new? You see, I don't believe women standing at these thresholds need to leave their career or abandon their businesses or everything they work hard to build. Sometimes the transformation is internal before it's external. And sometimes it simply can mean something as learning to lead differently, learning to lead in a different way. Sometimes it means redesigning the rhythms of your life, the way you align to your feminine energy and understanding how to move through that in your leadership. And sometimes it does finally mean giving yourself permission to honor what you've known all along, which is, in my case, it was to finally say goodbye. And the truth is, only you can discern what this next chapter is asking for you. And you only can do this by giving yourself permission to pause, breathe, go within, and listen. And so I invite you to do that this week, to go within and listen for what is this next stage of your evolution asking of you. So, if today's conversation has resonated with you and you recognize yourself as standing at one of these peak threshold moments, I want you to know that you don't have to navigate this alone. Through my private practice and my advisory work, I work with a select number of elite women leaders every year who are ready to redesign their lives and leadership so that success no longer comes at the expense of their vitality, their fulfillment, their joy, their well being. And together we walk through what I call the sanctuary path, and we create a life and a way of leading that is deeply aligned to who they are and the woman they are becoming. And so if you feel that this conversation was meant for you, I invite you to reach out via one of the links and underneath this video. And sometimes all it takes is one thoughtful conversation to help you look at things through a different lens. And so, again, thank you for spending this time with me today. It is truly an honor to share these conversations with you. And I hope you'll join me again for our next conversation from the sanctuary. Until then, may you continue to trust the wisdom within you, honor the quiet whispers that are guiding you, and create a life and leadership that feel deeply aligned, beautifully lived, and wholly your own. I'll see you next time.